binds oxygen cooperatively. And we also talk about the cooperativity. Excuse me. Cooperativity is one of the main features of life compared to non-living matters. And you will see a lot of cooperativity interaction in many biomolecules, not only in hemoglobin. Okay, so let's go to page, let's see, 200. Yeah, let's go to the page 200. Okay, you don't need to see the book. I can do that for you.
Yeah.
200页.
You can do the share screen, sir.
Yes, I will do that. Page 200. Okay. $200. Okay, where's the share screen? Where is this screen sharing function? Cannot find it.
At the bottom of your screen, Sure.
At the bottom.
Yeah, the green one.
Ah, okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. That's you can see this is just one of the hemoglobin subunit. Okay. You all know that hemoglobin has 4 subunits, and this is just one of them. And we call hemoglobin subunit as 2 alpha and 2 beta. And you see the screen here. This is the beta chain of hemoglobin. Okay. And you want to know that you see the pigment right here, and that is the oxygen binding site. Okay, and that is not protein. Okay, that is not protein, and that is the binding site for oxygen. Okay, and let me show you. Okay, this is the actual binding site of oxygen. Okay, so as you can see, this is not protein. It's a more complex chemical compound. And in the middle, you can see this is Fe right here in the middle. That's iron, right? And that is the binding site of oxygen. Okay. Okay, let me ask you the question. You see steel in the air get rusted because of oxidation, right? And is this process reversible or irreversible?
Irreversible.
You know iron, right? Right, you know this is irreversible, right?
Yeah.
And then if you look at right here, this is also iron, right? When the Fe binds to oxygen, is this reversible or irreversible? 你们看到这个分子哈，它中间有一个铁，对不对？它跟氧气的结合，它氧化这件事情是可逆的还是不可逆的？ Yes, this is irreversible, exactly. So Ali, you are right. But think about this. Why the same metals has two different behavior? If you have the iron in the air, you get oxidation, and this is irreversible, right? But the iron sitting in this heme molecule, within this hemoglobin, the oxygen binding is reversible. Why this is the case? Okay, and you understand that if the binding of the oxygen to the iron group is irreversible, everybody get into trouble, right? Because the oxygen binding occur in the lung area, and when the hemoglobin carry the oxygen into your periphery tissues, and the oxygen will not be able to release, then the cell in your body cannot get oxygen, right? So this must be a reversible process. But how do you make this reversible? The secret is lie in the structure of the hemoglobin. Okay, so the iron here is protected by three-dimensional structure of hemoglobin molecule, and this protection provide weak binding between oxygen and the iron, and therefore the oxygen binding and release becoming much easier. Okay, so this is why we are using protein to carry oxygen instead of using the iron to carry the oxygen. Okay, so I hope this would be make understandable to everybody. Okay, and you want to know that if you look at the molecule right here, you see the green part, the Fe, the iron, right? It was bind to 4 nitrogen atoms. But you want to know that this is also the binding site. It's connected with the hemoglobin molecule by amino acid called histidine, right? And on the other side, it will bind to the oxygen. So let me look at, okay, let me just move a little bit. Okay, so if you look at right here, this is the heme molecule, okay? And you see the green atom, the iron, is binds to this molecule, and this molecule is called histidine, okay? And the oxygen is binds to on the other end of the iron. So this is how oxygen is binds to this area, okay? So when oxygen binds to this area, the whole electron is pulled to the oxygen, and therefore, if you look at the size of the iron, this gets smaller, right? And it's going to fit inside the ring structure. So this is the what happened during oxygen binding and release. This is oxygen binding form, and this is the oxyhemoglobin right here. Okay. All right. So if you look at here, this is the structure of the hemoglobin molecule. There are 2 beta, see alpha 1 and alpha 2 right here, and you have a beta 1 and beta 2 right here. So the entire hemoglobin molecule is made by 4 different polypeptide. And for each polypeptide, you have the heme group to carry the iron for oxygen binding. So that means for each molecule, you have 1 oxygen binding site, and they work cooperatively. What we mean cooperativity is mean when you have 1 oxygen binds to one of the subunit, it's going to cause a 3-dimensional change, and that change is going to affect the neighboring 3 molecules to make the oxygen binding much easier for the rest of the molecule. And therefore, when one is bound, another 2, it's much easier to bind. And you have 2 second binding, you make the rest of 2 much easier to bind. So that is called the cooperativity. We have mentioned this in our last lecture. Okay, so that's why if you look at the binding curve, this is the binding curve. Okay, so that's why if you look at the binding curve between the oxygen concentration in your environment in x-axis and the oxygen binding percentage, you do not see a straight line. Okay, instead you see a cooperative binding curve. This sigmoidal curve is one of the feature of cooperative binding, and you are going to see a lot of this in the molecule of your body. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the response to exercise. Okay, so what is hemoglobin response to physical exercise? You understand that during exercise, the oxygen consumption increases. And therefore, if you look at the muscle oxygen concentration get lower because oxygen has been used, right? Okay, so you want to know what is the concentration of oxygen in your tissues, which is about 20. Okay, it's right here. That's about 20. Okay, during exercise. And during non-exercise, the concentration of oxygen is about 40. Okay, how about your lung? Your lung is about 100. It's high concentration of oxygen in your lung, right? So when you have high oxygen, the hemoglobin tend to bind more. Okay, so you can see when the hemoglobin is in your lung, about 100% of the oxygen is bound to the hemoglobin right here. Okay. And under resting condition, 40, the oxygen is going to bind to the lung and carry to the rest part of your body. Okay. And when the concentration reaches 40, the oxygen is going to release by about 21%, right? Under resting condition. Do you see that? You see the blue number right here? Okay.
21%, yeah.
So when you have the concentration shift from 100 to 40, this is the muscle, okay? Under rest condition, the hemoglobin is going to donate about 20% from hemoglobin to peripheral tissues. Okay, how about okay, you can see there would be additional 45% release of oxygen from the hemoglobin molecule. So in total, that would be 66% drops. Okay, 66% of the hemoglobin, of the oxygen from hemoglobin molecule is going to release to the peripheral tissues. Okay, so this is very ideal condition for human body because you want to have the molecule which can carry oxygen, but is very willing to release oxygen to the peripheral tissues when there is only small drop in oxygen concentration. And therefore, cooperative binding becoming very important for the survival of our multicellular system. Okay, why I'm talking about multicellular system? What is the difference between multicellular system and unicellular system? What is the main difference? 单细胞生物跟多细胞生物最大的差别在哪里？
Is it the multicellular system, they have more component than the unicellular?
Yes, you have many cells. That's true. You have many cells. They are living together, becoming a one system, right? That is good because you put everybody together and they contribute to each other, and therefore you can specialize and make everybody living easier. Okay. For unicellular system, however, you can get oxygen much easier because you don't have your neighbor blocking the oxygen, right? But in multicellular system, the main problem is when everybody are living together, they are far away from oxygen, right? Only the one living on the surface can get oxygen, right? So that is the main difference between multicellularity and unicellularity. Okay, so in multicellular system, you have to deliver the oxygen delivering system. So hemoglobin, just one of them. You also need to have the vascular system, and therefore you can have the hemoglobin flow into every corner of your tissues to deliver the oxygen for every single cell, right? And we also understand every single cell is going to have a low oxygen because they are the consumer of the oxygen. And therefore, you need to have the hemoglobin molecule that can very easy to release oxygen when the environmental oxygen concentration is low. Okay, so this is what happened during exercise. So under resting condition, only 21% of oxygen is released from hemoglobin to the peripheral tissues. But during exercise, the release of oxygen expanded to 66%. It's about 3 times, okay, from the hemoglobin molecule. So that's what happened during exercise. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Another thing that is also important is that where's the location of the hemoglobin? Is that in the plasma or inside the red blood cell. Okay, where's the location of hemoglobin? Inside the red blood cell or outside red blood cell in the plasma?
Should be attached in the red blood cell.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. The hemoglobin is actually sit inside the red blood cell unless the red blood cell collapsed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the reason why you don't put hemoglobin directly inside plasma? So that is the question. 为什么你们人类不把那个血红素直接放在血液中，而是放在红血球里面？它放在血液中也是可以，它一样是可以带氧气。Okay, you know that the hemoglobin can carry oxygen and it's going to release, and therefore why not just leave the hemoglobin inside the plasma instead of sit inside the red blood cell? So that is the main question.
Yeah, this is difficult question, sir.
Okay, let me explain.
Mm.
The reason is because in red blood cell, it will produce a molecule called 2,3-BPG right here. If you look at the screen, will you be able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Well, you see, this is the molecule has a lot of negative charge, right? 2-phosphate right here. And there, this is carboxyl group right here. Okay. You see a bunch of negative charge, right?
Mm.
Okay. And this is produced only inside the red blood cell. Okay. And if you look at the 2,3-BPG produced inside the red blood cell, negative charge is going to interact with the positive amino acid. For example, histidine at position 2, lysine position 82, histidine position 143, histidine, lysine, histidine, right? So that is right here. You see right here?
Mm.
In the core structure of the hemoglobin right here. And remember that the negative and positive charge will form electrostatic force to strengthen the structure of hemoglobin. And this is going to have a profound effect to the oxygen binding. Okay, let me show you this. So this is the experiment. Okay, sorry, just a second. Okay, sorry. 跑掉了。enzyme. Okay. Sorry, this is quite slow. Okay, right here. Okay, right here. Okay, if you look at the figure 7.16 right here. Okay, let me enlarge a little bit right here. You see a two curve, right? You see a black curve and the red curve. So two condition. The first condition is the hemoglobin, pure hemoglobin, no 2,3 BPG. So that is black line. And the red line is hemoglobin in red blood cell with 2,3 BPG. Okay. So if you look at it right here, 100, that is long, right? You have a lot of oxygen right here. So 100% bound to hemoglobin. So when the hemoglobin carry the oxygen to the peripheral tissues, for example, to under exercise condition, the tissues is 20, right? And what is the main difference between the black line and the red line? What is the main difference? 你们看一下，红线是有 2,3 BPG 的，也就是说红血球里面才会有那个东西。那黑线呢是只有 hemoglobin。当 hemoglobin 把氧气运送到周围的组织后，有什么不同的差异？你看它的组织哦，它的氧气只有20的时候。So if you look at the tissues, has the oxygen only 20, the hemoglobin is going to donate only 8% of oxygen from hemoglobin. If the hemoglobin is not inside the red blood cell, right? So on the other hand, it is going to release 66% of oxygen from hemoglobin when the hemoglobin are sitting inside the red blood cell with 2,3 BPG. So that is the main difference. So that's why you don't just use hemoglobin to carry oxygen. You want to have the hemoglobin sit inside the red blood cell to bind and release oxygen. Okay? So now you know the answer. Okay, let's look at next one we are going to. So from here, you understand the fact that you know the hemoglobin can bind and release oxygen. And that is important because the binding of oxygen is reversible. That is important for a multicellular system. And from here, you also know the binding of hemoglobin, the binding behavior of hemoglobin is very sensitive to the environment, right? So you already learned the oxygen concentration of the hemoglobin of the environment is also affecting the binding of hemoglobin. And now you know the second factor is 2,3 BPG, second factors, okay? Okay. Another factor is pH, okay? So please let me know what kind of condition is going to change the pH of your tissues. What kind of condition is going to change the pH of your tissues? You understand that during exercise, your tissues is going to release the lactate, right? and produce huge amount of carbon dioxide, right? So what do you expect on the pH? 你在运动的时候，你会产生乳酸跟二氧化碳，它对 pH 值的影响是什么？ Increase or decrease? Lactate and carbon dioxide is going to have
Decrease.
some
No.
decrease. Yes,
Yeah, decrease pH, right?
that's right. Yes, exactly. So the decrease of pH is going to have a profound effect on the structure of hemoglobin, and therefore the binding behavior of the hemoglobin also changed, right? Okay, and this is the experiment that show you, if you look at the curve, the figure 7.19, okay? So you can see that the red line is when the pH is 7.4, right? That is when you have no exercise. Okay. And the blue line is the pH at 7.2. And that is the condition that you have production of carbon dioxide and lactate. Okay. So if you look at how much release of oxygen from hemoglobin, you can see a big difference, right? So at what condition the hemoglobin is going to release more oxygen?
In the conditions more acid.
Yes, that's right. Acidic condition is causing more release of oxygen, right? When the oxygen concentration decrease from lung to tissues, from 100 to 20, right? So acidic condition is going to release 77% of oxygen from hemoglobin compared with 7.4, which is 66% of release of oxygen, right? You think about this. You know, there are some people, they think that acidic condition in your body is not good. And therefore, there are some people are taking sodium bicarbonate in your drink, right? Have you heard of this? Sodium bicarbonate supplementation. There are some people are using that. 有听过那个人家喝那个碱性的那个叫做什么？sodium bicarbonate 中文要怎么讲？啊，碳酸什么？碳酸氢钠哈，有听过这个吗？ Okay, so people they try to use the sodium bicarbonate to increase the buffering capacity of pH in your blood, right? And that is going to cause the problem in the hemoglobin release, right? So you can see that people are expecting that this might increase your performance, but not too many people use this because the ergogenic effect is not consistent. And part of the reason is because if you neutralize the pH in your plasma, you also affect the oxygen release. You affect the oxygen binding curve of the hemoglobin. So that might not be able to give you the best outcome in your performance, right? Okay. All right. The reason that the pH is influence the binding capacity of hemoglobin is because of the interaction between the histidine 146 and asparagine position 94. Okay, from here you can see that if you have the add proton right here, proton is released from either lactate or carbon dioxide, right? And that is going to cause a linkage between two hemoglobin right here. So this gives you the idea that, again, that hemoglobin structure is very sensitive to the environment, right? The number one is oxygen concentration. Number two, whether or not you have 2,3 BPG. Number three, whether you have a proton, whether your pH is low, right? So these three conditions is going to change the kinetic, the binding kinetic of hemoglobin to oxygen. Okay, so we are going to talk about the carbon dioxide effect as the number 4 condition that is going to influence the oxygen binding. So let's take a 10 minutes break. Have some coffee?
Sure, Lasa. Thank you so much. Then you may have some coffee and I talk to my student. Oke, tadi apa yang disampaikan Prof. Kuo itu sebenarnya lebih ke lanjutan dari materi kita minggu lalu tentang hemoglobin. Beliau menyampaikan tadi ada 3 kondisi yang mempengaruhi efektivitas kerja dari hemoglobin. Tadi yang pertama adalah molekul yang disebut dengan 2,3 BPG ya. Itu berada pada sel darah merah. Ya, kalau paling tidak salah, coba nanti dikoreksi lagi. Sel darah merah dan itu mempengaruhi kapasitas ikat dari hemoglobin ke oksigen. Hemoglobin tadi disampaikan berada di bagian dari sel darah merah, bukan di plasmanya. Kemudian kondisi yang kedua yang mempengaruhi daya ikat hemoglobin terhadap oksigen adalah pH. Ya, semakin pH kita turun, semakin asam, maka daya ikatnya semakin melemah. Yang baik jika pH-nya semakin basah itu daya ikatnya semakin bagus. Tadi disampaikan bahwa yang mempengaruhi pH itu karena dirilisnya terbentuknya proton dari molekul laktat dan karbon dioksida yang mana kemudian menurunkan derajat pH, membuat kondisi tubuh kita menjadi lebih asam, dan ketika kondisi tubuh kita lebih asam, maka kapasitas kerja dari hemoglobin itu menurun. Kemudian yang ketiga itu lebih sifatnya tadi evaluasi ya, bahwa konsentrasi dari oksigen. Konsentrasi dari oksigen itu adalah kondisi ketiga yang mempengaruhi kinerja dari hemoglobin. Jika konsentrasi oksigen itu tinggi, maka daya ikatnya itu lebih bagus. Namun jika konsentrasi oksigennya lebih turun, akan cenderung untuk melepaskan molekul oksigen yang ada. Begitu. Mungkin dari Mbak Fia mau menambahkan apa yang saya sampaikan ke adik-adik. Boleh, Mbak Fia? Silakan, Vi.
Oke. Ya. Basically sudah semua sih, Pak Ali, karena memang memang sudah ya
Ada
tidak ada
satu
tambahan.
ada satu yang saya kelewat Mbak Via, itu tadi Prof Ko menyampaikan begitu ya.
Gimana?
Bagian atau struktur dari hemoglobin, asam amino yang menjadi bagian dari hemoglobin itu adalah histidin, dan histidin ini yang menjadikan molekul hemoglobin bergabung dengan struktur zat besi. Makanya kemudian histidin sama zat besi ini disebut dengan metaloprotein. Jadi protein bentuknya itu bukan hanya asam amino semua, tetapi gabungan dengan molekul lain. Di sini adalah hemoglobin. Dan dia itu pada saat kondisi istirahat, tidak aktivitas fisik yang tinggi begitu, oksigen yang dilepaskan oleh hemoglobin ke jaringan periferal kita itu sebanyak 21% dari total oksigen yang ada di paru-paru. Namun ketika kita dalam kondisi aktif secara fisik, maka pelepasan oksigen untuk jaringan periferal itu meningkat sebanyak 45%. Jadi totalnya menjadi 66% oksigen itu di delivery. Oksigen itu diberikan ke jaringan periferal kita. Begitu. Ya, ada tambahan lagi enggak, Mbak? Enggak ya? Enggak. Nanti tambahannya pada saat diskusi begitu ya. Tadi di sini Ibnu Rian Setiawan, dia menanyakan begini Mbak Via, di struktur hemoglobin itu kan ada ada molekul 2,3 bifosfat, apa tadi G-nya ya, saya lupa itu, 2,3 ppg yang gliserat, betul, yang menghubungkan struktur molekul alfa 1 dan 2. Dia pertanyaannya bagaimana pengikatnya untuk molekul betanya itu apa gitu. Ini nanti
Pengikatnya untuk
molekul beta.
Zat yang dapat mengikatkan gitu ya?
Ya, karena tadi kan kalau kita lihat strukturnya hemoglobin itu dia punya 2 alfa, 2 beta. Nah, sedangkan yang berikatan dengan molekul 2,3 bifosfat gliserat itu kan alfanya, bukan betanya lah. Yang ditanyakan Ibnu Rian ini yang menjadi penghubung betanya itu apa struktur. Aku kira enggak ada. Betanya itu kan oksigennya buat mengikat oksigen. Ya, jadi kalau yang tadi 2,3 bpg itu ibaratnya kayak pengikat si hemoglobin ke darah merahnya. Lah, betanya ini yang mengikat oksigennya. Well, nanti pertanyaan ini Pali tanyakan ke Prof. Kuo, nanti kita lihat jawabannya kayak apa. Begitu ya. Kalau menurut Mbak Via gimana? Kalau logikanya saya begitu.
Menurut saya sih memang strukturnya gitu ya. Untuk di alfanya, untuk betanya kenapa gitu nanti pakai ada ikatan dengan apa? Ya mungkin oksigen, tapi mungkin juga ada
pengikat lainnya.
Enggak, mungkin dari strukturnya memang seperti itu gitu.
Iya. Berarti betanya bebas begitu.
Iya. 自己被别人这样说自己，你就说这里有很多人都会瞪你一下，像我。
Pak Ali mungkin mau diskusi bentar ini soal yang tadi multiseluler dan uniseluler. Dalam bayangan saya itu terdapat di mana multiseluler dan uniseluler itu?
Terdapat di mana?
Ya.
Oke, itu kan kalau mamal, kemudian living organism yang kompleks, itu kan memang terdiri dari multiseluler begitu ya. Tadi yang membedakan antara uniseluler dan multiseluler adalah kalau uniseluler dia akan ini ramai banget. Sebentar dulu, nunggu mereka reda.
好，然后我会比如说像那个这个部分我还会写线上，让那个学生。
没问题。好，谢谢。男生的，不要给你老婆。真的。
Via, halo?
Ya.
Ya, jadi kalau tadi yang saya tangkap begitu kan pertanyaannya Prof adalah apa sih bedanya multiseluler sama uniseluler? Kalau tadi sih jawabannya adalah kalau yang multiseluler itu kan sel-selnya itu mereka bisa bekerja sama dan membentuk tisu jaringan. Jadi culture atau apa ya, mereka bisa bekerja sama. Tapi kalau uniseluler dia sendiri kan kemudian dia bisa hidup kayak gitu. Dan yang kedua perbedaannya kan organel-organel di multiseluler itu kan lebih kompleks ketimbang yang di uniseluler. Itu aja sih tadi awalannya.
Oh iya. Oke. Thank you, Gi. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Pak Ali.
Okay. Is everybody ready now?
Yeah, we are ready, now, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, look at right here. This is red blood cell, right? And you can see this is the red blood cell right here, and peripheral tissues right here. And you can see that the body tissues, or we call peripheral tissues, is the source of carbon dioxide generation, right? So when you have carbon dioxide generated in peripheral tissues, it's going to increase the hydrogen concentration in your blood, right? Okay, and you just saw that the hydrogen concentration increase, the proton concentration increase, is going to affect the hemoglobin binding curve. Okay, how about carbon dioxide? So this is another question. So carbon dioxide, can carbon dioxide independently affect the hemoglobin binding curve? So that is the question. Okay, you see proton right here. It's going to affect the binding composition by changing the three-dimensional structure of the hemoglobin. And this is what we call the Bohr effect, because this scientist discovered this phenomena. So this effect is named after Bohr. Okay? And now we are asking the question whether carbon dioxide has independent effect. And the answer is right here. Okay? Okay. From here, you can see the figure 7.22. Okay, you can see there are 3 different binding curves. Okay, so you see the red line is when the condition is 7.4, no carbon dioxide. And the blue line, 7.2, no carbon dioxide. And purple, 7.2, and there are 40 torrs of carbon dioxide. Okay, so you can see that the binding curve is different, right? And which one gives you more release of oxygen from hemoglobin as the ambient oxygen concentration decreases?
I will answer that the condition with pH 7.2 with 40 torrs carbon dioxide.
Yes, exactly. You see 88% release of oxygen from hemoglobin occurs when pH at 7.2 with carbon dioxide. And this is also different from pH 7.2, no carbon dioxide. So this gives you a demonstration that both proton concentration and carbon dioxide concentration act independently to the hemoglobin binding to oxygen, right? So that is proved by the in vitro study. Okay. So now, how many conditions is going to affect oxygen binding behavior of hemoglobin?
There are 4.
有哪几种状况? Yes, you already know 4, right? The first one
is the oxygen concentrations.
Yes, this is the major one, oxygen concentration. Number 2,
2.3 BPG.
Yes, whether or not you are in red blood cell or outside red blood cell, it's going to affect. Okay, number 3,
pH.
Yes, pH. pH can be affected by what?
The hydrogen ion.
Yeah, the hydrogen ion
from the lactate and carbon dioxide. And
Yes.
the number 4, the last, is the carbon dioxide independently affecting the hemoglobin capacity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I want to study again, Lao Tzu.
Yes. You can speak Indonesian to your student about the 4 condition. But hopefully, I think your student already know, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And this is additional information that I record your presentations last week, also today, and so they can visit my YouTube channel and then play it and learn more and more and repeat, something like this. So
That's
it's
good.
easy for them.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing is is carbon monoxide. Okay, you know that, right? Carbon monoxide. Okay, let me find out that one for everybody. Sorry. Okay, right here. Carbon monoxide is also another molecule that is going to affect the hemoglobin binding. Okay, at what condition you can have the production of carbon monoxide? 什么样的状况会导致一氧化碳的增加？ 知道吗？ Yes. Yes. When you are burning something, okay, for example, if you go to places that are burning tree, okay, if you have a tree burning or you have a newspaper burning or that kind of things, if you have incomplete burning, that is going to produce big amount of carbon monoxide. Okay, so if you are burning that within a room, it's going to dramatically increase the concentration of carbon monoxide. Okay, and as a consequences, you see right here, carbon monoxide binds hemoglobin about 200-fold more tightly than does oxygen. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is going to compete with the oxygen, and therefore your body won't be able to get enough oxygen. Okay, so that is quite dangerous for the people who are, especially in agricultural area. If you go to the agricultural area and you want to fertilize the land, and there are many people, they are burning the tree, right? And if you are living in that kind of environment, then you are going to have big problem, especially if you're sitting inside the room. Yes.
So may I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when you are giving us the example for those people who are living in agricultural area, I think that it still have a positive effect, because then after that they can grow their plant or whatever for the fertilize the soil. But I would like to take the example of lifestyle for the people who are smoking, because I think this is a basic evidence for who any one of you who are smoking. So right now, Professor Ko just telling us to stop smoking indirectly, because smoking will just give our body carbon monoxide, which is will affect negatively the oxygen binding for our body's needs. Am I correct, Lawson?
Yes, that is very good example, especially when you are doing that in a closed environment. So that can cause increases of carbon monoxide. So that is very good example. Don't smoke. Or another thing is, I'm so glad that you are bringing this point. When you do smoking, not only this can cause big problem, it also cause a damage of your lung. Okay, so when you are young, it's no problem, because when you are young, you can fix the problem by your immune system. Okay, but when you are getting older and older, the immune system becoming less, relatively less against the entire body. So that means if you don't have sufficient immune system, then your lung will not be able to recover soon. Okay? So all the immune resource is going to be attracted by your lung. And that is going to make the rest part of your body aging faster. So it has been demonstrated that if you are smoking, okay, you smoke, or you increase the PM2.5 particle, it will cause sarcopenia. And the reason that the muscle is going to have atrophy is simply because the muscle growth requires immune system. And all immune system has been attracted by the lung. So your muscle becoming short in immune system. So that is one of the main reason, especially you are getting older, you don't want to touch smoke and cigarette. Okay, that is very good example right here. Let me speak in Chinese. 我们之前讲过，就是我们全身组织的成长，它会需要干细胞跟免疫细胞，就是骨髓的资源。好，因为你有免疫的资源，所以你的肌肉挑战的时候，肌肉会成长得更大，对不对？好，是因为肌肉发炎是吸引免疫细胞来重新清除，让组织年轻，然后也可以成长得更快。可是如果说这些免疫资源都被肺吸走了，肺大概它消耗了全身免疫资源的60%，所以你的肺只要是在空气不好的状况之下，那你的全身的免疫系统的资源在周围就不够了。所以你会发现很多老人抽烟，他的肌少症发生的速度是非常的快。So you can see many elderly, if they have smoking behavior, they tend to have a more severe sarcopenia compared to the normal people. And that is because most of the immune source has been attracted to lung, and the muscle has little immune system left to promote the growth. If you do weight training, you challenge the muscle have inflammation, and that would end up have the muscle hypertrophy. So inflammation would drive muscle hypertrophy. That is because you have an immune system. But when that kind of source, when immune source has been attracted to your lung, then you cannot have muscle hypertrophy. And you even have muscle atrophy occurs. So lung, you want to have less challenge, as small as possible to maintain your muscle mass. Okay. Let me put pH. We already have this. We already have this. Okay. we are going to talk about the mother and the infant. Where is that? Okay, another thing I would like to talk about is that, you know, the hemoglobin molecule, hemoglobin is expressed in adult, but in infant or embryonic tissues, you are going to have different form of hemoglobin, the hemoglobin isoform. So I'm going to find this. Okay. Hemoglobin isoform right here. Okay, I cannot find it, but I'm going to just give you the idea that in hemoglobin in infant there's a certain isoform. It's called is embryonic hemoglobin. And what is the feature of the isoform is that it is going to release oxygen more compared to adult. And therefore, in embryonic state, your infant is going to have the priority of oxygen delivery. So thinking about this, the embryo is sitting inside the body and is far away from oxygen, right? So when the tissues is far away from oxygen, you are going to be very dangerous if you don't have enough oxygen as you develop, right? So therefore, in the infant, you need to have activation of the expression of certain form of hemoglobin that has different affinity to oxygen compared to adult. And therefore, you are giving the priority of oxygen to your infant compared to your mother. So that is important knowledge for you to know that in our body, the hemoglobin isoform is different even in the same body of the same individual. So that is something that you want to keep in mind. Okay, let's go back to repeating that what happened during exercise. So when you have a fast muscle contraction, okay, the muscle and brain are different, okay? So when your brain is mobilizing, that oxygen is going to be delivered to the brain immediately. Let me just give you one example. If you're doing squat, you can see that you do not see the oxygen deficiency in your brain. Instead, you can see about 10% increase in the blood delivery into your brain, okay? And one of the main reasons is because the brain is going to activate the vasodilation, vasal relaxation of the capillary inside the brain tissues. And therefore, you do not see hypoxia happen during exercise in your brain, okay? However, if you look at the muscle, it's different case. When you have the muscle contraction, the muscle is going to have the blood squeezed out of the tissues, okay? So when you do in the muscle contraction, the blood is actually pumping out of the muscle tissues. And therefore, you are going to experience the hypoxia or ischemia immediately during exercise. So muscle and brain are different. The priority always go to the brain. And the muscle is going to suffer the hypoxia within a short period. But during the relaxation period, after muscle contraction, the blood will come back to the muscle tissues, okay? But when the blood come back to the muscle tissues, because of the ischemia, is going to have the high concentration of proton. The high concentration of the proton is because of the hypoxic condition. And aerobic metabolism is going to produce a lot of lactate, okay? And that is going to cause the environment reducing the pH value. And you also have the oxygen consumption increases after muscle contraction. Okay, remember that after muscle contraction, the blood is coming back to the ischemic tissues and not only return back to baseline, it's going to above the baseline. So you are going to have a huge amount of oxygen is coming back to the tissues. And that is the time you start to have the production of carbon dioxide. Okay, so you have contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation. You are going to have a lot of lactate and a lot of carbon dioxide. And because you have the hemoglobin, and therefore you can see that under this kind of muscle contraction circle, the hemoglobin is going to release 88% of the oxygen from the hemoglobin into the peripheral tissues. And therefore, you are able to maintain the aerobic metabolism to produce the ATP. Okay, so I'm talking about the priority of oxygen for brain and muscle. Okay, so in the real condition, what we talk about the moderate to medium exercise intensity. So if you have the exercise intensity that is able to sustain for, let's say, 1 hour, so that is moderate intensity, okay? For that kind of exercise condition, the brain is always the priority, and you won't be able to have the hypoxic condition in your brain. Okay, and the reason for that is because the vascular control is always the higher level compared to the molecular control. Okay, so you already learned that the hemoglobin binding behavior to oxygen is going to be affected by many conditions: oxygen concentration, pH, lactate, carbon dioxide, all that kind of condition. But above that level is the vascular control. And vascular control is made by the brain. The nervous system always is the higher authority. Okay? So when you exercise, the brain is going to decide who, where the blood vessel is relaxed, brain first or the muscle first, okay? And that is dominated by the brain, okay? So on the normal, the moderate exercise intensity, the brain would not have hypoxic condition, okay? However, if you have extremely high exertion, for example, you finish a huge muscle contraction and maximum effort, the situation might change, okay? So if you have a high intensity exercise, for example, you are sprinting, you have a repeating the sprinting, or you do squat at maximum level, sometimes you are going to have the headache, okay? So when you have the headache, if you look at the oxygen saturation of the hemoglobin, sometimes you can see that this kind of condition may decrease the oxygen saturation by more than 10%. Okay? That is not normally seen at moderate exercise intensity. Okay? So if you have that kind of situation happen, if you have the oxygen saturation decreased by 10% in your brain, then you will suffer headache. Okay. So what I'm telling you is that the oxygen delivery has 2 levels. So what you just learned is at molecular level. So I would like to emphasize that at molecular level, that is much more important compared to the molecular level regulation. Okay, not completely understand. If you don't quite understand, let me, Arif, you understand, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, can you explain to your student in Indonesian?
Yeah, I will,
Bahasa?
sir. Yeah, bahasa.
Okay.
I will.
Yeah, I'm going to explain to my student in Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay.
To my juniors. Oke, Dek. Tadi yang disampaikan Prof. Kuo setelah beliau menjelaskan tentang kondisi-kondisi yang mempengaruhi daya ikat kerja molekul hemoglobin di dalam tubuh kita. Beliau sekarang berbicara tentang prioritas distribusi darah yang mana juga termasuk oksigen di dalamnya saat kita latihan fisik. Pada saat kita latihan fisik, beliau menyampaikan bahwa otot itu mengalami yang namanya ischemic atau istilahnya adalah hypoxia, kondisinya mengalami hypoxia. Mengapa? Kondisi ischemic atau hypoxia itu adalah kondisi di mana konsentrasi oksigen itu rendah. Mengapa bisa begitu? Karena pada saat otot berkontraksi, tadi beliau menjelaskan bahwa kontraksi itu kan fasenya ada dua, kalau yang disebut dengan kontraksi otot isotonik, karena ada yang konsentrik ya, yang dia squeezing, ada yang eksentrik yang dia memanjang. Nah, kalau kontraksinya yang dilakukan adalah kontraksi isotonik, maka dua jenis kontraksi otot yaitu konsentrik dan eksentrik ini dilakukan. Nah, terjadinya ischemic itu karena kontraksi otot yang dilakukan adalah kontraksi otot konsentrik, terjadinya pemendekan. Nah, jadi logikanya ketika segelondong otot, contoh katakanlah bicep brachii ya, jadi otot bicep yang di lengan kita itu melakukan kontraksi otot tadi konsentrik, itu kan kayak di squeeze. Jadi darah maupun molekul-molekul lainnya termasuk oksigen yang sedang kita bahas ini pumping out ya. Jadi tersqueeze, terpencet keluar, dan yang ini yang menjadikan kondisi di dalam molekular levelnya jaringan otot itu terjadi hipoksia atau rendahnya oksigen di dalam jaringan. Nah, kemana itu darah dan oksigen yang di pumping out? Ya larinya ke dalam sirkulasi darah kita. Nah, pada saat kondisi seperti ini, yang menjadi prioritas darah yang menjadi prioritas distribusi darah dan molekul-molekul yang ada di dalam darah adalah tadi otak ya, otak. Jadi ini yang menjadi jawaban mengapa pada saat kita latihan itu kondisi di dalam otak kita itu tidak mengalami kekurangan oksigen. Ya, tidak mengalami kekurangan oksigen karena prioritas distribusi darah dan komponen yang terkandung dalam darah pada saat otot itu berkontraksi adalah otak. Gitu. Namun kemudian setelahnya ya, ini sebenarnya balik lagi relations atau hubungannya selalu ada hubungan keterkaitan. Lihat sih kalau di sini ini ada hubungannya dengan yang namanya hutang oksigen setelah latihan. Karena kalau kita setelah latihan selesai itu kemudian megap-megap banget gitu ya, ngos-ngosan bahasa Jawanya. Terus kemudian sometimes ketika kita sudah dalam resting conditions itu sometimes kita take a long breath gitu lah, seperti itu kan sebenarnya usaha atau respon tubuh kita dalam nyauri ya, dalam membayar hutang oksigen saat kita beraktivitas fisik. Begitu. Nah, tadi kemudian Prof. Ko menambahkan contoh kejadian ketika ada seseorang setelah melakukan latihan fisik dengan intensitas tinggi dan dia sampai katakanlah pingsan begitu ya. Itu karena ini paling yang rada blank, coba nanti kita tanyakan Mbak Fia. Itu karena konsentrasi oksigen yang ada di otak ya, itu cenderung terlalu banyak begitu. Ini kalau paling tidak salah. Betul enggak Via? Tadi Prof. Ko bilang begitu. Ini yang paling rada blank. Coba kita double check dengan Via. Oh, sorry. Sebentar Via. Ya.
Saturasi oksigennya yang menurun.
Di otak kita gitu.
Ya, saturasi oksigen yang menurun ketika kita melakukan high intensity.
Saturasi kan berarti konsentrasi
oksigen.
kan, rasio antara karbon dioksida dan oksigennya menurun begitu ya.
Iya betul. Karena banyak yang digunakan gitu kan, jadinya saturasinya menurun.
Itu enggak
dan
karena
menurunnya
karena efek
kurang dari 10%.
Kurang dari berapa?
10%.
10%.
Jadi ya bisa jadi efeknya headache gitu.
Jadi pusing begitu ya. Tidak sampai pingsan ya, tapi pusing aja. Gliyeng kalau orang Jawa bilang tuh gliyeng. Ya, terima kasih Mbak Fia.
Okay. Okay, Ali, and we can open question for student if your student has any question. 如果说有问题的话，我们可以有一些时间来交流。So we are going to, okay, just a second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I didn't realize that I mute myself. So we have one question from my student, from Ibnu Rian Setiawan. He is asking about this, Lause. He said that when we take a look the structure of hemoglobin, we do have the iron molecule and then 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains, right?
Yes, very good.
And then he said that based on your explanations, the 2 alpha chains will link to the 2.3 BPG molecule. And
yes.
his questions, Ibnu's question is, for the beta change, what is this function? What I mean, to where the beta chains connected? I try to answer based on my guess. The beta chains should be connected to the oxygen, but I don't know. What is the answer from you, sir?
Okay, this is very good question. How is the 4 subunit binds together, right? How is the 4 subunit? In hemoglobin, you have a 2 alpha and 2 beta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The binding of the subunit. Okay, 他们印尼的人问说，这4个 subunit 它把结合在一起的，它彼此之间的结合是靠什么样的力量？ So the question is going back to the fundamental question of how are 4 molecule, 4 polypeptide binds together. It's mostly by non-covalent linkage. Okay, non-covalent linkage is a weak binding, which is mostly first hydrogen bonds, second electrostatic bond between the side chain of amino acid. Okay, and these are the weak binding as well. Okay, there's a no covalent bond between subunit. And why? What is the main implication of this? Why not use covalent bond? Well, this is a very important question as well to understand life. If the binding of the molecule within the hemoglobin are strong, then the flexibility will lose, right?
Mm.
When the flexibility loss, you also lose capability to change your structure according to situation, right? So we just learned that under more than 4 conditions, the structure of the hemoglobin is going to change. That is because the binding among 4 subunits are weak, and therefore you can fine-tune the structure of the hemoglobin. So if you make the strong linkage, for example, the covalent bond between the subunit, then the flexibility of the structure change will not be able to like the current situation. Okay, so that is very smart question. 他们印尼的学生非常聪明，他问非常好的问题。知道他的问题吗？他说，就是4个 subunit 之间，它彼此之间的结合，它的彼此的交互作用是靠什么样的一个交互作用？对，氢键还有呢？对，离子键，就是 electrostatic， 这些都不是共价键。So I'm speaking Chinese to our student because this is a very good question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share with your junior. Okay. 你会发现它彼此之间并没有共价键。它彼此之间如果是共价键的话，它是一个强键的话，它面临到环境的改变的时候，它的应变的幅度会变小。那今天生物分子它之所以有办法去，你今天我们的环境是不断在改变的，包括氧气的浓度也是不断在改变的，所以你需要有一个分子，它是可以随着环境而改变，来决定它要释放氧气还是结合氧气。那所以它必须要有一个弱的键结。那如果说你把所有的东西都变成是一个强的键结的话，它就没有办法去完成这件事情。So I'm telling all students that you can see a lot of example very similar to hemoglobin molecule, that if you have the strong interaction, then you are losing your adaptability at molecular level. And therefore, you consider human body a much better machine compared to automobile, right? You see automobile is made by steel,
yep.
Right? And the steel will not be able to change their structure that much like the human molecule, right?
Right.
So that's why human body are better machine compared to anything made by
Human.
other material,
Mm.
right? Even consider the covalent bond is a strong binding force relative to hydrogen bonding and electrostatic interaction, van der Waals interaction, right? But still much weaker compared to the metals interaction, right? So for the future, I think this lesson is also very important for the student in engineering.
Mm.
If you want to find the material to hopefully to make the machine robot, right? So you might want to find the material that has much more flexibility compared to steel, right? So that is very important question. I'm so glad that your student raised this kind of question, which is quite smart.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
We do have one question more.
Sure, yes, please.
This is from Etika. She's asking, would you like to explain how to do an exercise for hypotension individuals?
For hypertension patient or
Patients.
hypertension patient?
Hypotension.
Hypotension patient.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. This is tough question for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that the clinical person to answer the question.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of situation is going to is causing hypotension? 有什么样的状况会造成低血压？
I think
What condition?
probably Etika can talk to you directly. So Etika, you may speak.
Sure. Hi, Etika.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm on driving, sir. Yes,
okay.
I'm still stay tuned in your lecture today. So
Okay.
it is interesting topic in hemoglobin. So I think how about the subject with hypotension and anemic person, sir, to do exercise?
I don't know. I don't have much knowledge on this. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, but my question is, what are the situation for people having hypotension? One condition is that you have loss of the blood, dehydration. Dehydration might be the condition that you have causing a hypotension. For this kind of condition, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. But the first thing you want to do is to supplement with electrolyte and water first, and then see whether this is going to be sufficient. Well, I don't have enough knowledge on this. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Oh.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no further question, let me 有问题吗？
Yeah.
这个主题没有问题哈。Okay. Okay. If no question, then we can close the session.
Yeah. So are we going to have your lecture again next week, Lasse? We do have, right?
Yeah, sure. No
Yeah.
problem.
I think the same time as usual, and then like a day before, I will send you the link by email for sure.
Sure. Yes.
So
okay.
yeah, thank you so much and take care, Lasse.
All right. See you.
See ya.